Welcome to On the Middle East, the podcast of the award-winning media service Al-Monitor, where each week we talk with the decision makers and thought leaders who are making the news and shaping the trends in the Middle East. I'm Andrew Parasolidi, president of Al-Monitor, and this week our guest is Dr. Abdulaziz Al-Saghir, chairman and founder of the Gulf Research Center. Dr. Al-Saghir specializes in international politics and regional security issues pertaining to the Gulf region. He has authored and edited numerous publications and has many articles in local and international newspapers related to Gulf affairs. He is also the editor of ARA, a monthly Arabic language magazine focused on the Gulf, and editor-in-chief as well of the Gulf Yearbook. Dr. Saghir holds a PhD in politics and international relations from Lancaster University in the UK. Dr. Abdulaziz and I will be taking stock of the latest developments in the region, the flurry of diplomacy and meetings, the pause in the Iran nuclear talks, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's regional tour, the violence in Israel, the prospects for U.S.-Saudi relations, and more. My conversation with Dr. Abdulaziz Al-Saghir begins now. Dr. Abdulaziz Al-Saghir, welcome to On the Middle East.
Thank you very much. Welcome, and I'm glad to be with you today.
Glad to have you with us today. Abdulaziz, you and I were at the Doha Forum last week, and as there always is, there was a lot of diplomatic flurry around the forum. And there was also the Aqaba Summit hosted by King Abdullah, the Abraham Accord Ministerial Summit in Israel, and U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's regional tour. Meanwhile, the talks on the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the JCPOA, or Iran nuclear deal, seem to have stalled, apparently over whether the United States will lift the designation on the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, as a terrorist group. Help us understand the recent diplomatic flurries in the region, especially as it relates to Iran, and how you see the impact of the JCPOA, or of no JCPOA if there's not a deal, on regional security.
Thank you very much for the complicated and tough question, but I'll be glad to try to answer it from my point of view. To start with, when the JCPOA was signed in 2015, Saudi Arabia and the rest of the Gulf country, they were not consulted. They were not part of it, and they were not consulted for any detail, despite of their own concern at that time, which basically has to do with the enrichment, number of centrifugation. The period of time, 10 to 15 years, is nothing, as far as they're concerned. But they, because of giving their special relation between the United States and the Gulf country, they have accepted it. And even at that time, if you all remember, King Salman did visit Washington during the time of President Obama and gave the endorsement for the JCPOA on the basis that we hope that this will change the attitude and behavior of Iran toward the region, since they will have their money back and they will be able to export their oil and, to normalize the relation with them. Unfortunately, what we have seen is the other side. We have seen that Iran interpret the JCPOA 2015 is licensed to expand their activity and to do much more interventionist policy, expansionist, using the sectarianism as dimension in all the Arab state countries where they are involved, whether it's Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, creating cells in the Gulf between Bahrain, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia. So it was not really an agreement where it made Iran behave better toward the region and stopping their interventionist policy. Now, after the President Trump decided to withdraw from it, and then the renegotiation taking place after President Biden came into the office, I think we are concerned of the two outcomes. Is the outcome going to be another license for Iran to expand because the US is showing a great desperation of expanding, of signing the deal and getting it over with, because they need to be free for the real power, struggle with the Russia and then later on with China, and they just want to get Iran off the way for them? Or that's going to change and make Iran behave better this time and work with an inclusive security architecture in the region and be closer and then stop a lot of the things that used to annoy. What surprised us that the Iranian came up with the request of delisting the Iranian Revolution Guard. And the Iranian Revolution Guard was never part of the JCPOA. It was part of the Terrorism Act and issues. And since if the US does listen to their request and accepted it, which it looks like they might accept it, then from our point of view, basically they are going to relicense, they're going to give legitimacy to the Iranian Revolution Guard this way by delisting them and allow them to expand. And we know that without the approval of the Iranian Revolution Guards, there will be no deal in Vienna. So that's one of the concerns. If they are going to look at it from that angle, and they're going to consider, delisting the Revolution Guard as an additional license for expansion, that will be of a great concern to us. But if they're not going to, act in that way, then what are the other, scenarios or possibility? One scenario, some people says that Iran, if they don't get a deal, then they will become more aggressive in the region, and we're going to see much more attack like what they did to the Saudi critical oil facility before in September 2019, encouraging the Houthi to do more attack on Saudi Arabia like what we have seen in March 2022. So we have the two scenarios. One scenario says, yes, they might behave better and they might feel, focus on their domestic, which we hope that should be the scenario that will take place. And we hope the US exert much more pressure for them that they go into that direction. Or we may see the scenario that there's no deal, become more aggressive, and then we will do. So in both cases, we are concerned because if they insist to delist the Iranian Revolution Guard as part of the deal, why they did not accept to take into account all our concern from the region? We have a set of requests to the US and to the B5+1 about all our agenda that we thought they need to take it in account, which it has not been. We have been promised that there will be a pressure to look into that one. So, we are still waiting when the deal will be announced, whether by signing a deal or calling it off, and we will see what's the outcome out of that one. But in the end, I think if the US and the B5+1 did not realize that this was not an excellent deal, if it was an excellent deal, airtight, waterproof, as they call it, they would not have been able to go to 60% enrichment and to increase and change the type of centrifuge they are using, which has a bigger and larger capability than the the original one that they have accepted, the IR2 equivalent there.
What about the prospects for the Baghdad-mediated Iran-Saudi talks? And do you see any possibility for traction for peace talks in Yemen, especially if there is an Iran nuclear deal?
Okay. Let's say that, the round talk that has been between Saudi and Iran, primarily it was focusing on security and intelligence matter. The official information that was published through different resources that Saudi wanted to bring up the issue of Yemen as number one, which basically we're saying hands off out of Yemen, do not involve, do not support, do not send ballistic missile to them and so on. While the Iranian would like to normalize the relation first and then start any talk. And Saudi, they feel not great since the 2016, the burning of the embassy and the consulate in Mashhad. Iran did not really cooperate and they did not do what they promised that they will do. So there is a mistrust situation here. This talk primarily was focusing on security issue. It was not really a political. There was supposed to be the fifth round in Baghdad almost 2 weeks ago, but it did not take place, I think, because the Iranian, they were hoping first to get the JCPOA and then move toward a fifth round. And again, we all were waiting to see what new government will be in Baghdad. and how they are encouraged and what they would say with regard to the Saudi-Iran talk. But when it comes to Yemen, I have to say the following, that Saudi, in principle, they should not and they will not, discuss with the Iranian the issue in Yemen, because if you discuss with them, basically you are legitimizing their intervention. Saudi have called, through the coalition, through the GCC Secretariat, have called for a consultative and a meeting between all the different Yemeni party in Riyadh. Unfortunately, until today, the Houthi did not participate, but still, it's much easier to have the direct talk with the Yemeni party, including the Houthi, through the coalition or through the different Yemeni party, rather than having it with Iran. Iran in the past 7 years, all what they did is they encouraged the aggression against Saudi Arabia by supplying them with more than 500 ballistic missiles, with giving them the training on the drone, increasing their capability, make sure that their accuracy of firing, power is there. So how come after all of this, and also the mines, the fast boats that they fuse, and the maritime mines also, all the attack that the Houthi, they were not trained to be on that war, and they were never really an official army. But all of this came through the Iranian Revolution Guard. In fact, it is funny, the only country, somebody was asking me the other day, what did you get after 7 years of war? I said, at least we made sure that they don't occupy the whole country in Yemen, the Houthi, and there is no official recognition, for them worldwide, with the exception of Iran, because of the Yemeni ambassador in Tehran, so-called ambassador in Tehran. He is the representative of Al-Quds, Faylaq Al-Quds, which is part of the Iranian Revolution. So I don't think having JCPOA is going to encourage the Iranian to have a better talk or really be more sensible in these things. In fact, they will feel as, they gain something. They pushed the US to accept their terms and condition, and they pushed all the, B5+1 because they are busy with Russia and Ukraine, and because they see this as a priority. So why would they give up anything today?
Let me ask one final question on Iran. Do you think that if there is a deal on the JCPOA, that would be a benefit, an advantage to moving ahead with the Yemen peace talks? So do you think the talks would be influenced for better or worse by the conclusion of an Iran nuclear deal?
I don't think I'm going to see a positive move from the Iranian side toward Yemen. I think they feel that they're winning, the game, as we call it. They have achieved what they want to achieve with the US. They are in a stronger position. This is their alliances. The rest of the world did not punish them, for what the Houthi is doing or what support they provided to the Houthi. So why would they change? Why would they be Mr. Nice Guy now and try to stop their support or stop training or militarizing the Houthi with the weapon system that can disturb and kill innocent people in the neighborhood, not only in Saudi Arabia, but also in United Arab Emirates. And also we have seen it in the maritime issue and the danger for the free movement of vessels in the water in the state of on the Gulf, water, or in the Arabian Sea.
Abdulaziz, there is
Yes.
also a great deal of concern about the escalating violence in the West Bank and the terrorist attacks inside Israel, especially as Ramadan begins tomorrow and the convergence of the religious holidays in the coming months for Jews and Christians as well. Now, Secretary Blinken highlighted the need for progress toward a two-state solution while he was in Israel and the West Bank last week, and King Abdullah of Jordan seems seized of the urgency of the moment with his diplomatic activities in the last week, visiting Ramallah and hosting both Israeli President Herzog and Defense Minister Gantz. Can you put the Israeli-Palestinian issue for us in regional context? How is this playing out, and what does it mean for those states, including Israel, possibly the UAE, that might prefer to focus on Iran and other issues and trends?
we have the two sides of the story. The Israeli consider this meeting as more of an alliances. They consider it as is going to be one of series of meetings, more periodical. It's going to be, they did approach it slightly different than what we heard from the Egyptian foreign ministers and the others. The four countries, Morocco, Egypt, United Arab Emirates, Israel, and then the participation of, the US State Secretary Blinken. They want Israel, they wanted to use that as anti-Iran also, number one, but they did not achieve that one, I think, because Secretary Blinken knows that the US is putting a lot of effort to get JCPOA in agreement and to try to resolve the issue with Iran. So he cannot endorse this meeting to be anti-Iran the way how the Israeli look at that. But at the same time, I think when it comes to the today, yes, we have three type of different pressure. The Arab-Israeli or the Palestinian-Israeli conflict has become lower on the agenda because of the Ukraine-Russia issues. The nuclear the nuclear negotiation JCPOA in Vienna is another reason, and third, of course, is the increase of the incidents in Israel and the killing of the different incident that took place. So all of that, if you put it together, it shows that yes, it is important. This is why Secretary Blinken did meet with Mahmoud Abbas in the Palestinian Authority. He still talk about the two-state solution, and but the subject did not receive much pressure, neither from the US toward Israel, nor from the Arab countries in total, because of the current situation that everybody is talking about it. But at the same time, maybe I'd like to emphasize, and I don't think the Israeli, by having the Ibrahim Accord and the agreement with UAE and Bahrain and Morocco, that they do intend to go and defend those countries against any external aggression. The Israeli, historically, they will go after the threat that really, being perceived by them, even in third territory, and try to attack it. And we have seen this on the Iraqi nuclear file. We have seen this in Iran in certain location. We have seen it, in Syria. We have seen it in the PLO in Tunis. So, but they will not go as a full force, to other country and try to defend an external threat to those countries whom they are signing with them. So everybody should make no mistake. We're not going to see Israeli defending those countries. Maybe there will be sharing of intelligence. Maybe there will be a security collaboration in terms of information, maybe some training, but I don't think that physically we are going to see a strong Israeli presence. Back to the issue of the two-state solution. Yes, this is what Saudi Arabia have proposed since 2002. And still what we have heard from the Saudi Crown Prince in his last interview with the Atlantic magazine, he said, if the Palestinian and the Israeli resolve their problem, we can have an alliances with Israel. Here, we're not talking about alliances that traditional or conventional one. I think it can be political and strategic alliances, because defining the threat to the region, if they resolve the problem with the Palestinian, if they want to live in peace, and if they are part of the region and there is a threat to the region, then we can see a collaboration from both sides to stop external aggression against the region.
At the Doha Forum, the Russia-Ukraine war was, of course, a large part of the discussion. There seemed to me an uneasiness about the war. There was, of course, uniform condemnation of the attack on Ukraine by Russia, but there also seemed a wariness about the implications for the region of what a decades-long new battle for freedom, as President Biden described it, and the unprecedented sanctions on Russia might mean for the Middle East, especially the countries that are balancing their relations with the United States, Russia, and of course, China. And in addition, the UN just this week said Yemen, Lebanon, and Egypt faced a food catastrophe because of the war, given the disruption of wheat and other imports. How do you see the Russia-Ukraine war playing out in the region, including how states are assessing what comes next in terms of U.S. diplomacy and what it means for the states themselves?
Okay, I mean, as a principle, as a matter of principle, definitely all the Gulf countries, including Saudi Arabia, are against any external aggression against any country. We have suffered from that during the Iran invasion of Kuwait. We have never accepted or endorsed that by any means. So that's as a basic principle. But at the same time, what Putin was demanding from Ukraine, similar to what we want to, if you know, from Yemen, you know, in Saudi Arabia, basically you want to have a good neighborhood, an administration that he can deal with, and disarmament, that there should be no military capability that can represent a threat. He has 2,000 kilo border with Ukraine and a 500 kilo sea border. So that makes it a bit crucial for them. But at the same time, we are not by any means, this is why all the Gulf country on the UN vote, we did vote for the non-aggression, of course, against the Ukraine. At the same time, strategically is not the same importance to us. Ukraine has no border like Iraq or Yemen to us in the Gulf region here. So it's not equally, in terms of a strategic threat, for us. At the same time, the Ukraine crisis, unfortunately, came during the time where there is, I would call it a bit of a turbulence in the relation between the Gulf country and the US. And there is a lot of pressure on that side. So meanwhile, the Gulf countries are trying to show some sort of resistance, a little bit, I would call it, a little resistant against the US pressure that traditionally they would have accepted many of the US, wish list and go for it. But at the same time, now I think we are start seeing, not willing to be out of the OPEC plus or not to destroy that one. They're, they wanted to, they called everybody to, they don't want to condemn officially Russia, at the same time, they still believe, having, a single, or let's say, hegemony worldwide might be not the most ideal situation. They have anticipated that we are going back to the Cold War era, but they were all hoping that even if we go back to a Cold War era, that they should be both at least dealing on the same level between the old Soviet Union and the United States on the 86, 87, that sort of level of relation that exists, but not the way that we have seen it, at this stage. But, meanwhile, we understand the pressure that, is going to be on the commodity prices, as we have seen the skyrocketing on the prices. But it's still, that thing, we have seen it at a different period of time. I'm sure countries will help each other in this part of the world to offer, come the difficulties also on the commodity prices. But let me set the stage correct here. We understand our relation with the United States is the most important relation. And we understand that aggression is not acceptable. But at the same time, we wish to see a much more constructive engagement by the European and the US in supporting the Russian and the Ukrainian to come into a better political dialogue and a better political, decision. So instead of continuing the current situation that leads only to a difficult economic situation, lead to more difficult. At the same time, the Gulf countries, by the way, they did look at to the three-country position. How did they maintain their neutrality? China, India, Turkey. So they're not the only one trying to maintain semi-neutral position, I would call it. And although we understand that if the situation continue and go further, maybe the neutral position not an option to exercise, in my opinion, because then we're going to see, alliances, and we're going to see the whole situation. But again, we hope to see that crisis, overcome and, not the same impact.
Abdulaziz, last question. I would like to ask you about developments in U.S.-Saudi relations. Karen House has a piece today in the Wall Street Journal, and she writes that it's time for Washington and Riyadh to put aside grievances and bury the hatchet. How do you see the trends in U.S.-Saudi bilateral ties, and can they get better in the coming months and years, especially given the challenges in the international and regional environment?
Okay. in my personal opinion, what we are seeing today, the President Biden administration approach to the Saudi-US relation, it's a continuation of what President Obama started. And also, by the way, it did continue during President Trump time. So, I still consider it's not an administration policy, it's a state policy, which we are very concerned to see consistency there between Obama, Trump, and Biden. Biden maybe have used a different approach than Trump. Trump made us paid heavily and signed a lot of contract, but in reality, the two pillars on the relation, which is very important, which is guarantee and defending, we see that the guarantee, they talk about it, but implementation is quite weak. And we see on the defensive side, we need the two. We need somebody to defend in case if we are subjected to an external aggression or intervention or attack. And also we need to be equipped with the proper equipment in terms of the defensive equipment that we're going to need to defend ourselves. If these two are not available, then basically you're pushing the region and Saudi Arabia in particular to look at alternative. Now, I would still say alternative is not easy because, Russia is a producer of a raw material. Like us, they have oil, gas, mineral, and our military is more of a Western military doctrine rather than the Eastern. So we are not trained or equipped, for that one, and we don't consider that as an alternative. At the same time, China, we have a huge, buyer and seller relation. China still imports about 35% of their energy from the Gulf country, 1.7 million barrel at least from Saudi Arabia. So still it's a buyer and seller and not a strategic. So what we have seen is a change on the US approach towards Saudi Arabia. At the same time, there is a Saudi resistance against that one. And the Saudi resistance, they have to express themselves. They no longer keep quiet and tolerate what as it used to be before. I think we start seeing here in the new young leadership in Saudi Arabia and quite a clear answer saying, no, we're not going to leave OPEC Plus. No, we're not going to condemn Putin for that one. We wish that both solve it amicably. No, we're not going to do everything you want us to do there. So again, those are clear messages, but it's a pity to see a relation that the various vessels left the Saudi port in 1939 that today goes through this turbulence, I would call it, because I still consider Saudi-US relation is a very strategic and very important, and we all have to work in resolving whatever problem that occurs in that one. And also you see Saudi moving toward China a little bit and trying this. All are clear signaling that we're no longer adopting an old policy that we used to say, okay, we'll stay quiet, we'll adopt it, we will take it. And don't forget, twice we did listen to the US in increasing our oil production in the 80s to weaken the Soviet Union presence in Afghanistan. And second time when Russia in 1998, when they were going to collapse and we were requested to decrease our oil production by more than 2 million barrels, we did it for the sake of the US and to help on their policy toward Russia. But today, because there was a very clear strategic important relation, it was, as I said, the guarantor and the defender. Now there is a question in these two pillars on the relation. So where are we going to head? Are we going to see if there is a change in administration, whether another Democratic leader or a Republican, is that going to continue the same approach with Saudi Arabia or is going to change? We have a lot of sensible people in the US that they know the region, they know Saudi Arabia, they know how important the relation between the two. They can bring a lot of sense to the table to agree, and then we can always apply school of new realism, make sure that we are all pragmatic on the relation and resolve the issue and go about it. Now, the difficult situation to see if the crisis in Ukraine continue and there's a shortage in oil supply, either by the Russian decided not to export or by the American and the European embargo the Russian energy. Who's going to fill that gap? What is going to happen? How the Saudi position and the rest of the Gulf country, that is a changing on the game. We might see that one.
Abdulaziz, thank you for your time today. I enjoyed and learned from this conversation very much, as I always do when talking with you. And it was great to see you in Doha.
Thank you very much. Same thing. It was great to see you in Doha, and thank you for the invitation today. And we'll stay in touch.
And Ramadan Kareem to you and your family and all friends in the kingdom.
Thank you.
We will return after this break.
I'm Elizabeth Hagedorn, and I'm the State Department correspondent at Al-Monitor.
And I'm Joe Snell. I'm Al-Monitor's video editor. Let's admit it, this past year has been difficult to stay on top of the news and sift through what's accurate and what's misleading. Let Al-Monitor help you.
If you care about the Middle East and North Africa, you should consider listening to Al-Monitor's audio series On the Middle East with Andrew Parasalidi and Amber and Zaman, and On Israel with Ben Caspi. You can now watch our newest video podcast, Reading the Middle East with Gilles Capel. You can subscribe to these series on your favorite podcast platforms.
And through a host of free daily and weekly newsletters, we offer a range of perspectives with the highest journalistic standards. You can subscribe to these newsletters at almonitor.com.
As an award-winning media service headquartered in Washington, D.C., Al-Monitor has a network of over 160 contributors around the world.
So if you haven't done so already, be sure to visit almonitor.com, where you can find all of these newsletters and podcasts along with first-class reporting and analysis.
Thanks to our guest Abdulaziz El-Sagar and our production team of Beowulf Rockland and Rosabelle Hine of Two Squared Media Productions. We will be back next week, and if you haven't done so, please sign up for all 3 of our podcasts at your favorite podcast platform. Reading the Middle East with Gilles Capel, and Gilles' guest this month is the legendary French architect Jean Nouvel, designer of the Institut du Monde Arabe, the Louvre Abu Dhabi, and many other amazing structures. Also On Israel with Ben Caspit, where Ben this week speaks with Colonel Ofer Haruvi about how unmanned aerial vehicles are changing modern battlefields. And of course, this podcast on the Middle East, where I will be here next week with another decision maker or thought leader from the region. Thank you all for listening, and please keep up with all of the news and trends in the Middle East at almonitor.com.